hire a cashier customer service
This meeting
position.
is being recorded.
As well as some sales positions too. So even if you don't have any sales experience, that's totally fine. You can come in and kind of learn those positions as well. The other opportunities that we have too that I've actually kind of come over the last few years is virtual, working from home. We have a few entry-level positions in our contact center, which is, I say a few, our contact center is over 350 staff now, and they have work at home options. So you might have to go do your training in Omaha or, maybe in our Des Moines store, but then you can work from home after your training is over, as well as our delivery operations area, which is kind of like a contact center for the delivery side, so that back end piece instead of the front end customer experience. So that's kind of a basic of the positions that we have. Of course, I could probably dive in and talk forever about exactly what those do, but does that kind of summarize what you were looking for, Jen?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
Mary, would you like to go next and tell us about your company and some of the entry-level positions?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Jen, for the opportunity. Mary Hotran with Principal Financial Group and home-based in Des Moines, Iowa, but we do have global offices across the nation. I know the audience is more in Iowa. And since the pandemic, we have a lot of work arrangements for each employee. We are a financial company, retirement, 401k, you think about mutual funds. So we have 4 major business lines. Within those business lines, there's definitely opportunities from entry level to, pave your own way to different levels and different paths. When we talk about more of the entry level, initially, I think of, across the board, it could be in HR, it could be in our customer engagement centers, could be call centers, entry level sales roles. So across the gamut, because of the business lines that we support. Like Jesse, we do have, as I mentioned earlier, through the pandemic, different work arrangements, and that's what I would hone in on. I mean, since the pandemic, and since I've started with Principal 16 plus years ago, Principal has valued where we do best our work. And so we have thousands of different combinations of scheduling, schedules for employees, whether it be remote, 100% remote, a hybrid arrangement, or in the office. It would depend on each of the business units as well for some of the roles that we support, but a variety of different roles. And I know one of the areas that we're going to tackle is career paths. So we can get into that a little later. Was there anything else? Does that kind of cover high level, Jen, as far as
that covers it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Stacy, would you like to go next?
All right. Thanks, Jen. I'm Stacy Lavon with Wellmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our headquarters is here in Des Moines. We do have an office in our Cedar Rapids and then Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Wellmark, basically we're in a mutual company providing, healthcare coverage to our members. Really our goal is kind of that managing that cost of healthcare, providing outstanding service to our members, and really just empowering our members to stay and be healthy. One of the opportunities I wanted to talk about, kind of our most entry-level position, is our customer experience advocate. Basically, they're taking incoming calls from members and providers, responding to web inquiries, and also processing claims. We're actually hiring a class, so that position is posted today, hiring a class to start July 18th. It is Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. work schedule. This position will also provide 6 weeks of paid training. They do ask that you have your camera on for the training, so that way we can see that you're engaged and you're understanding, the training that's happening. All the computer equipment is provided: a laptop, monitor, a keyboard, mouse, and a headset. And then after training, you do have the option to be fully remote, or you can choose to be in the office 1 or 2 days a week as well.
Very good. Lots
Yeah.
of opportunities for remote. That's good information to have. So our next question is we're going to start with Mary. What types of skills or education should a job seeker possess to qualify for your entry-level positions?
Great question, Jen. I would say for the engagement centers, a minimum of a high school degree. There are some roles that require a 4-year degree. However, we have equivalent work experience that can be equate to that degree. But a majority of the roles in the engagement center is a minimum of a high school degree. The aptitude to learn and grow, the interest is there, and the aptitude to multitask as far as screens, having that proficiency on technology, because a lot of these engagement centers are working on multiple applications to field the questions
Okay.
that are coming in. But yeah, for a degree, minimum of a high school degree for a lot of these roles.
Okay. Stacy, how about for your positions? What's the education level you'd like to see for entry level?
Yeah. So, like principal, we do require a high school diploma. In addition, a minimum of 1 year of experience engaging with customers. So that could be like a retail, a service industry, healthcare provider, a caregiver. Obviously, since you'll be communicating with our members, we want to have individuals have strong written and verbal communication skills. We also use, multiple systems. So being able to, talk on the phone and type and take notes would be, very helpful in just being able to learn all those systems quickly.
Good. So some technology experience, customer service experience, as well as a high school diploma. And then Jesse, what do you have to tell us about the educational requirements for Nebraska Furniture Mart?
Yeah, so I would say it kind of depends on the position. We don't have education requirements for any of our positions until you get to, someone who's maybe looking at more of like a manager position or professional level positions. But as far as entry level, we don't. We do have age requirement
Okay.
for warehouse, and that's for because we operate equipment, you have to be 18 and power tools, things like that. But that's our only requirement for age or education.
Okay, so that's for the warehouse. Are folks able to work in other areas at say 16 or something like that?
Yep.
Okay.
We do allow all of our other positions. They don't necessarily have, obviously the legal age
Right.
requirements
Yeah.
to do things and hours worked and stuff, but
Okay.
we do not have a minimum age on any of our other positions
Okay.
because it's just sort of like safety standards
Okay.
for the warehouse. As far as other skills, for the warehouse, we'll hire someone who's never had a job before. We just want somebody who has, the drive, wants to do physical labor. It is lifting, pushing, pulling, doing lots of that kind of work all day. I've had people who just love working out and they're like, well, I just like to work out all day instead of go to the gym. I'm like, yeah, I've got a good job for you.
That's good.
So just somebody who's, looking for labor intensive type position.
Okay.
In sales and cashiering customer service, again, we don't require any experience, but if you've got customer service, even basic, experience, even a couple months is great. We were really just looking for people who are customer focused. We're retail, so we've got to be here to serve our customers, help them with what they need, and get them through their transactions. So somebody who's very customer oriented, likes talking to people, being out in front of others, as far as those go. And then call center would be similar to what the other two were saying, having a little bit of wanting to be on the phones. It's different than being face to face from other people, being on the phones, using the computer systems. and interacting with customers used to and wanting to have escalated conversations and how to, de-escalate those situations as well. So I would say that would be more of our call center delivery operations, what we're looking for in those skills.
That's great information. Thank you. So my next question is, we're talking about career paths today. So Stacy, could you tell us what would be an example of an entry-level employee advancing within your company? Could you kind of describe a career path and tell us if there's a minimum length of employment before an entry-level worker would be able to apply for more advanced positions? So if you're able to do that, we'll start with Stacy.
Yeah, so with our customer experience advocate role, we do have a promotional track where you can, where there's 3 levels basically. And then in addition to that, we have a senior advocate, which kind of serves as the informal leader, mentoring and guiding the other customer experience advocates. In addition, typically, employees need to be in their role for 12 months before they can post out to any other areas of the business that they have interest in. We've also seen individuals get promoted to that next level within the customer experience advocate, probably within their first year. It really just depends on the individual performance, the motivation to progress, and just the ability to learn quickly.
That sounds great. Thank you. Jessie, could you answer next, please?
Yeah, this one, I feel like I could talk for days on this topic because it's the one that I love the most. It's my favorite thing to do is to give promotions and new opportunities to people. And I feel like at NFM, it is really built into our culture to grow within the company. I myself have one that I started in an entry level right out of college. I got into an admin position in HR and grew my career to benefits, recruiting. Now I'm a generalist in a professional position over my 10 years here. But in my 10 years, I've seen so much growth. I can think of our senior leadership. President of the company started out as warehouse and moved his way now up to the president of the company, running the show for everyone across all states. I, actually just recently promoted a warehouse staff member to a warehouse lead. She's been with us for about 6 months and really showed her work ethic and process improvements and wanted things to be better. And it was a no-brainer for her to be in that position and have that opportunity available. We've also had some staff move from store positions to more corporate level supply chain, depending on where their career path wants to take them. The nice and cool thing about NFM is we are a retailer, so a lot of people think just, oh, it's sales, cashier, warehouse. But we do have all of our corporate support, which is now some of them are remote opportunities, so our other locations can take advantage of that. And if that's a career path you want to grow to and not just stay in the stores, those are available for you. We do job shadowing, have development programs to go through as well. So lots of opportunities. If you're ready to work and show that that's what you want to do, we'll find you the support to make it happen.
That's great to hear. Mary, do you have anything to add about your opportunities?
Yeah, with our opportunities too, there's definitely growth opportunities with all of the tracks, and there's multiple different tracks that every employee desires, right? One thing I do want to point out within Principal, you asked the question is, when can you post out for a new opportunity? Depending on the department, but we don't have a limit on when you can post out for a role. And the thought behind that is our biggest assets are our employees. And we have a program called the Growth Assignments, which is fairly new within Principal. So that's internal mobility. Think about, me in HR, I may have a strong interest to explore a different department without getting my feet 110% wet. I can maybe jump into what we call a growth assignment, an internal growth assignment to work in that other business unit for 20% of my time, maybe 50% of my time. Granted, both leaders are on board. It's a win-win for the employee. It's a win-win for the new leader to get work done, for me as an employee to get exposure to a different business unit. And best case, when they have an opening, they think of me. On the flip side, we've had growth assignments where employees have stepped into the assignment and learned that it's not the right role for them. So when you talk about, the desire to learn and develop, that's one of the perks that Principal has within our internal programs. But for each of the roles, there's definitely a track to put a time limit on when you can be promoted. Like Stacy and Jesse shared, it's how hard you work, it's your desire, what your path is, you help create. And one of our core values is owning what's next. So those open dialogue happens with the leader, and within Principal, that's one of the leaders' accountability to help develop and grow their employees. So I can't pinpoint just one track for the customer service rep role or the customer care center role. It could lead to sales. It could lead to, I think of someone that had started in the engagement center and then jumped in the help desk role. Now he's a software engineer. I mean, who would have thought? But certainly different paths, different opportunities. We have different folks' interests. So
very nice. I really like that idea that you can learn more about the other areas of work by trying it out. I think that's really a neat thing to be able to do. My next question, thank you guys for those answers. My next question is, we're going to start with Jesse. Does your company offer any type of tuition assistance or education assistance? And if so, what types of degrees would you encourage your employees to pursue that could lead to advancement?
Yeah, so we offer tuition reimbursement for staff that are actively in school, and kind of gives them an opportunity while we have a lot of college students actually that work for us in our larger locations, working part-time, weekends, but then end up maybe coming on permanent with us. But it's just a nice way to supplement that, your books in those classes, because it's quite expensive to do that. We also partner with Bellevue University, who is based out of Omaha, but of course they're basically an online opportunity, and we get a discount if we pursue a degree with Bellevue. And then
nice.
We also have a few positions that do loan reimbursement. So if you have an active or a loan you've been paying on, if you get into those positions, you could get some repayment there, which is, I am not in one of those positions, but it is very intriguing to try to go into one of those, because it is a nice little payment to help supplement that sometimes large loan payments that you're giving back. Those opportunities are in our contact center and delivery ops. So even their work at home, and you get a little student loan repayment, which is really nice as well. And then you asked, what degrees do we encourage? Honestly, at NFM, some of our positions require degrees, but we're not necessarily specific with them unless it's more in the realm of maybe IT, or maybe even supply chain sometimes, depending on the position. Obviously, IT, those degrees, you're learning a ton of stuff about the programming or whichever piece of IT you're going into. So if you're interested in that career track, it'd be a great opportunity to, get some training there or get a degree in that path. Otherwise, all of our other positions, I can even think of our HR group. We've got a variety of degrees, from marketing, business, psychology, to even degrees that have nothing to do with what we do. Just as long as you've had, you learn those social skills and things like that in college, and that's really what helps you progress your career path along the way. So
that's great. Who do we have next? Let's see. Is it Mary? Mary, you're next. Sorry, I lost track for a second. So we're
Yeah,
asking
as
about, oh, go ahead.
tuition reimbursement.
Mhm.
Was that the question? Yes.
Yep.
We do offer tuition reimbursements, but I do want to add also, when we talk about furthering education or, learning opportunities, there's definitely opportunities, workshops, conferences, dollars that are set aside for employees, if it certainly aligns with their desires and the role. So not to close off just tuition reimbursement, there's other means to learn. I think of some of the employees that have, connected with area colleges to further learn, workshops. We also have invested in the last year LinkedIn Learning globally, not just for the domestic employees, but for all employees, to align with one of our the core value that I talked about earlier: own what's next. Learn on your own time, through, for example, LinkedIn Learning, and then other, formalized trainings. We have a talent development, department that focuses on that, um, and aligns with the growth assignment. So additional learnings through tuition, externally, internally, certainly is promoted, within Principal. And when you talk about degrees, like Jesse, I mean, in our HR, in our backyard, we have a variety of different degrees, a variety of backgrounds, and that's what we promote: different lenses, different thought processes, different types of degrees, for each of the roles. Now, specifically with IT, there's some roles that, require specific degrees, right? Data analytics, for example, but it's more of the competencies and the skills that we are basing our roles on. But gosh, in our current backyard, psychology, data analytics, I think of education in their background as far as degrees, just a variety: sales, marketing degrees, a variety. So
Very good. Thank you. And then Stacy?
Yeah, so very similar to Principal. Internally, our learning and development team, they have a program called CEO of My Career. So it's really up to each employee to determine, what the CEO of your career looks like. It's really about kind of pursuing, your own personal kind of professional development growth internally, whether it's taking different online courses, just really building that experience, building those skills through different experiences, the classes, using different content that's out there. So it's really on that employee and how they want to be their CEO of your career. And then on the kind of education assistance, so Wellmark does offer a loan repayment for individuals that have completed a degree, your associates, master's, bachelor's when you start. So that's $5,000 annually. And then for employees that want to continue their education and pursue additional degrees, we would reimburse $10,000 annually. But the maximum together is $15,000 that we would help with education assistance. And as far as yeah. And as far as the different degrees, it's kind of like what Mary was saying, the diversity of thought and backgrounds. So we really don't have a recommendation. And very similar to Principal, we have those specific positions that do require like the analytics or the technology type backgrounds, but for employees pursuing additional education, we really don't have a recommendation. It's really kind of up to them.
Great. So it sounds like there is a lot of opportunity, just kind of summarizing our career path portion of our discussion, a lot of opportunity for entry-level positions with all three companies, a lot of advancement opportunities within each company. And then not only is there opportunity for tuition assistance and furthering of your education, but also opportunities for training within each of these companies. So a lot of opportunities to grow with both with Wellmark, NFM, and Principal. That's really exciting to hear all of that. I want to move our discussion now into learning a little bit more about the hiring processes within each company. So we have a lot of questions. Usually, we know that you're applying for a job probably with an online application, with a resume. What are some things that you're looking for? Mary, you're first on this question. What are some things or characteristics of a resume that really appeals to you in the hiring process and makes a resume stand out? And this is, I'm going to include this one. A lot of people want to know, is a cover letter required? And what are you looking for in a cover letter? I think a cover letter is kind of a gray area for some job seekers are not quite sure.
So at Principal, we don't require a cover letter, and you're spot on, Jen. It's done through the application process online. So that would be the initial step. Apply online. But I would, when, looking at a role against the requirements, we assume that you meet the requirements, and on your resume, portray that. Any results that you've provided on the resume would help out and help weed, you against other candidates. But basically with our engagement centers, the requirements are listed out there. We measure up against, your resume. What makes it stand out is maybe your accomplishments in the last, employment or what you've done. If it's a sales role, obviously, how you met goal. But for our customer engagement centers, I mean, the requirements are pretty specific and basic. And so your resume should mirror that. Cover letter, that's preference, but we don't require that at Principal. So.
Okay. Stacy, how about you?
Just like Principal, we don't require a cover letter, so that's really optional if an applicant wanted to include that. As somebody's applying, I would just, very similar to what Mary mentioned, just, recommending that you review the qualifications for the position and make sure that if you have those skills that you're actively reflecting it on your resume. Because we have to kind of make sure we're kind of checking those boxes that you qualify and meet minimum requirements. What was the second? There was a secondary question.
It was about the cover letter, and then
Okay.
Are there any characteristics that really would help a resume stand out to you?
And I would agree with what Mary had mentioned. Any results or achievements that you want to highlight or that you can highlight, I think will also kind of make your resume, your application stand out as well.
Great. Jessie?
Yeah, it's hard to add anything because I feel like we all have kind of the same things we're looking for. I mean, cover letter, very optional. It's not something that's required, but sometimes that's a good spot to put maybe a few of your accomplishments there if you can't find a place on your resume. But things that stand out to me on resumes are ones that are just well organized. Like they said, one of the biggest things when I do resume classes or give advice is look at the job description from the company that you're applying to and use some of those keywords that also tie to your work experience. Because as a recruiter, I'm looking at those resumes sometimes quickly, not reading them all the way fully. And when I see those keywords, that helps stand out and I can read it through more. And see how yours stands up to another person. So just really utilizing each individual company that you're applying to and going into the interview having knowledge of it. So when we ask questions or you can kind of answer interview questions tied back to the job descriptions and how you are, how you can complete that job and how you'd be a great fit for it.
Very good. Thank you. That's good advice. It's interesting to me that a cover letter is not required, because I think a lot of people think a lot about cover letters, and it kind of gets, worry about, is my cover letter done well, or, what should I include? So, so my next question is for Stacy. When we're talking about kind of the general hiring practices within your organization, how many interviews are involved in the hiring process, and what types of interviews are typical? And for example, types of interviews would be virtual, in-person, panel interviews, things like that.
Yeah, so when I think about the customer experience advocate role, with that one specifically, after applicant applies and they meet the requirements, typically the first step would be an HR phone interview. And if
Okay.
things go well there, and then we'll do a video interview, and it's typically two leaders within our operations team.
Okay.
For the most part, Wellmark is still doing video interviews for leaders, and then a phone interview for HR for a lot of our positions. There might be some
Okay.
positions where you might be asked to come in for a face-to-face interview, but I would say probably 80% of our positions are still being completed virtually.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of virtual. That's okay. Jesse?
Sure. We tried to make our application and interview process as smooth and easy for candidates as possible. So we're oftentimes coming up with new things on how to make that happen. Right now, and what kind of started it was with the pandemic. Everything went virtual right at the beginning, and we're actually in the process of doing virtual. But we do virtual pre-screens to start out with our candidates. So and we actually have a texting line. We can text, send you a link to a calendar, and you pick a time that works best for you, that matches your recruiter's schedule as well. So it just kind of takes that back and forth out of it. And when you have time on a break or lunch, you can schedule that. And we try to keep those shorter. So it's just kind of pre-employment questions, just to make it so we can get a background of you, make sure you'd be a good motivational fit and all of that. Then if you move on to the next process, we have one more interview, and it's more of how did you handle this situation? What were your results, impact? And that will be directly with the manager. Depending on the position, it could be, if it's with one of our store positions, it could be in person. If it's with a manager that's working from home, it might be virtual, depending on which one you're in. But either way, we like to get you face to face, whether it's over the camera or in person, to do that next interview. So try and make it as easy as possible for candidates, because we know, time is essential, especially if you're looking for a new position. You might already be working, and taking time off can make it a little bit more difficult. So we try to be flexible to that as well. And I'm trying to remember,
Okay.
I think there was one more thing I was supposed to answer, but maybe I hit it. I'm not sure.
How many interviews? What types? I think you got it. I think you got it.
Okay.
And then Mary, can you let us know about?
Yeah, sure. At Principal, it's for the engagement centers and customer service track. It's usually about a 2-step process, maybe a 3. That first step is that HR screening. What we've moved towards for the HR screening is what we call an on-demand interview translation. You schedule that on your own time. There's pre-recorded questions on that interview. You get 72 hours to conduct that interview on your own time, whether it be morning, afternoon, whenever. And then once it's submitted, it's reviewed by a live recruiter. And then that next step will be a department level interview. And we usually encourage the leaders to make a decision after that. To Jesse's point, time is of the essence. You may be working elsewhere and have, other priorities as well. But usually in that interview, you would have the hiring leader. We've encouraged the hiring leaders to bring on a teammate as well. It's your opportunity as the candidate to assess if Principal is the right fit for you, and vice versa. So use that time to do so and ask questions. Our HR interviews pretty standard. That second interview would be if you're the right fit for the team. There may be some situational questions as well, how you would handle maybe an escalated issue, etc. But we usually try to knock that out in 2 steps, given the market the way it is, and there's multiple opportunities out there. But that first step, if you're not comfortable with the on-demand interview as well, you can respond and we can still conduct that phone interview. A lot of our interviews are still virtual.
Okay. So the on-demand interview is like a recording of you
Yeah, so the
answering the
recruiter
questions. Is
will,
it on the phone or is it a
it's on
video
your phone
recording?
or on your
On your
computer.
phone.
So
Oh, okay.
the recruiter will pre-record the questions at the HR level. And then our specialist,
Interesting.
which is the coordinator, would send you the link. You take that, conduct that interview on your own time on your phone or on your PC, and then it gets sent back to review. It's
Okay.
supposed to be more efficient and, on your own time, more convenient. But again, we still have the option of HR interviews over the phone.
So you can choose to
Yep.
talk with someone in
Yep.
person or
Yep.
live. Okay. My next question is for, we're going to start with Jessie. So what advice would you offer to someone who wants to get started working with your company?
Oh goodness. So first I would say check out our website. So go to nfm.com/careers, or if you go to nfm.com, just scroll, just like I think a lot of employers scroll all the way to the bottom and we've got our careers page there. And check out the history of our company. One thing that, the biggest thing we pride ourselves on is, where have we been and where are we going in the future, and understanding who we are as a company, or any company you apply to, I think is really important. Culture, I think it's always been a hot topic at NFM, but it seems like a hot topic right now for what candidates are looking for. They want to work somewhere that fits who they are, that they have a space, they're welcome, and feel like they're making an impact. And I think if you read our story, the story about Mrs. B, all of the things that we do at NFM, you'll really find a place at home here. So check that out, and then look at our job listings, see what is available. We've got job listings in all of our locations. There's remote, Nebraska, Texas, Kansas, and Iowa. And really check those out and see what is a good fit for you. If you're then interested, I'm always available to answer questions, or we can get you connected to another recruiter to learn more about the company and see if we can find a place for you. So that's what I would give for advice.
Thank you, Jessie. Mary?
Similar to Jessie, I would encourage you to check out our website, but also come with an open mind. Some of you maybe, aren't interested in the customer care track, but we talked about, the different paths that you can progress to. No time limit. As you get your feet wet, you may discover this is the right fit for me. But then you may discover as you network within the company, there's other career tracks or other areas of interest. So first and foremost, check out our website. Be open-minded with the description. There are some times where maybe it's not clear with the description. Yeah, shoot me a message and I can certainly share with you what I know of the role. And then we can go from there. I did notice, Jen, there was a question on salary in one of the questions. I don't know if you're going to tackle the questions later.
We'll do the questions later, but
Okay.
if you want to address that,
Yeah,
that's fine.
no, just in our job postings, about 4 months ago, we do list the salary out on our job postings. If you have questions around that, I'm available to answer. I know that's important too. There's a lot of components as you're job searching, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. Keep an open mind, because where you start off with, I think of all 3 of us who are on the panel, we didn't start off in our dream job. Whatever your situation is, I mean, you can own your next, move as far as career opportunities at Principal and all the other employers too. So that would be my advice in general.
Thank you. And Stacy.
Yeah, so gosh, I think, very similar to what Mary and Jesse had shared. Obviously, checking out the website, making sure that our values align with your values, keeping that open mind. One thing I forgot to mention is Wellmark. We talk a lot about strengths, and strengths are like the activities, the things that you do that you love to do in a work environment. So we we talk a lot about that with our leader. So coming into, a position, open-minded, figuring out what your strengths are, what you kind of love and don't love to do, and having those discussions with your leader, and that could lead to other areas of the business that you would be interested in, or even projects that that the leader has that you get to utilize those skills. I think that is important to kind of keep that open mind as well.
Great advice. Thank you. And then our final question, we'll try and keep this one brief because we want to have a little time for questions. I'm going to start with Mary this time. In your experience, what is the biggest mistake a candidate could make in the job search and interview process?
I think I alluded to this earlier. Closing off the opportunity, right? I mean, maybe before you learn more about the role, there's a lot of opportunities out on our website. I mean, if they align to what you're looking for and you're looking for that next step, explore. Your biggest mistake is not to use that assessment process to your advantage. The company principal's looking at you and assessing you, but you're assessing if it's the right fit for you too, making sure, and the ladies had alluded to this, making sure the company aligns to your core values. Because if you don't find a company that aligns with your core values, what's the point? You're going to spend at least 8 hours a day dedicating your time. So make sure it aligns with your purpose, your core values, and what you enjoy to do. Stacey mentioned your strengths. If you know for certain this is not an arena that you want to pursue and you've been there, done that, why would you put yourself in that situation? So use it as an advantage. It's an interview process, an assessment process for principal and for you as a candidate. So that would be my advice and biggest mistake if you don't do that.
Okay, good advice. Stacy?
I think Mary kind of hit that, all the key points there that I would recommend as well. Gosh, I'm kind of drawing a blank to even what to add. Keeping the door, like
That's okay.
Mary mentioned, like keeping that door open. Maybe the role that you're originally interviewing for is not a good fit. Keeping that door open with that specific recruiter, stay in touch. Really just showing your interest in the organization, I think, is probably the best. And if you're not showing interest, even though you're not interested in that particular role, don't close that door. Keep it open, stay connected, and just, might not, it's going to take time. Wellmark, for us, we're a small organization. So although I've seen really good progression with individuals starting in the customer experience role, I've seen them flourish into other areas of the business too. So just remember, it takes time. So. All
right, thank you. And Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems like culture and the values is important to all of our companies for sure. Yeah, I would say, coming in, and some of the things that I see lately is that people are coming in and they aren't as excited for the interview as maybe we are. Like, we are excited to have candidates. We are ready to talk to you and are engaged in the interview, and you being just as engaged back. I mean, people can be relaxed and we don't want it to be excitable and crazy the whole time and they're nervous, but being engaged, listening, giving your input, and being there for the interview. and all the way there for the interview. So try and set things aside and be focused on that space. And to that culture and value fit, I've had a lot of people just stop reaching out after, interviews, and then they come back and try to interview again, and they won't tell us what happened the last time. But if you just come back and say, it isn't a fit right now, whether it's the schedule's not going to work, or maybe I'm just looking for something different right now, being honest and open about that with your recruiter goes a long way. Even if it's a no to us, that's totally fine. I would rather know why. So then maybe if it's one thing I have changed in the future as an employer, I can reach back out and be like, you know what, right now I think, this changed. Is it going to be a good opportunity for you now? So keeping, again, that door open like they were talking about, but being honest about why it might be a no for you so we can maybe help in the future.
Great advice. Thank you very much. So that concludes our questioning on the hiring process. I'm going to ask Nicole to join us and read some questions to our panelists that have been included in the chat box. We have about 10 minutes, so we'll try and keep this brief. We don't have, we'll start with Stacy answering the first question, unless you'd like to pass the question off to someone else. Nicole, what question are we going to start with?
Yeah, and I was just going to add to, I did put this in the chat to start, but any participants in here, if your name on the Zoom is not your actual, it's not showing your real name, if you can just message me so you can get credit for that for attendance today, I would appreciate that. And so the first question I have was actually directed towards Stacy. So I will just let you answer this, because somebody wanted to know, you had mentioned earlier that there was a position, a specific position. So they wanted to know the name of that position and where they can apply for that. It was towards the beginning when you were speaking.
Yeah, so I've been talking mainly about the customer experience advocate role. So that is posted on our website, which is wellmark.com/careers.
All right, thank you. And then I'll just throw out some questions. Not everyone has to answer them if you don't want to. And this one, I know Mary kind of touched on, but they were asking about salary requirements when you are filling out an application. If, from your advice and your experience, if someone does put on a salary requirement that is much too low, you think, or way too high, either way, do you kind of, does that affect their chances at getting an interview?
For Wellmark, if you listed like a lower salary expectation, so a lot of our positions have a range, and if you lowball yourself, we don't take that against you, because we're probably going to offer you more than what you had listed. And as far as listing a higher salary expectation, it kind of depends on maybe the position, your experience, kind of that pool. A lot of times we'll most likely reach out to see if there's flexibility in what you've indicated on your application.
Okay. And then, so for the virtual first interviews, is that a new thing? And do you see that that is going to continue for the future, even when we're in, the post-COVID world? Do you think that will be something that stays?
For principal, the on-demand, is that what you're referencing, or the virtual HR screening that Stacy and?
Either one, whoever. I mean, I think they were just curious to know if they feel like that's something that's here to stay.
For us, it is efficient for us, but there is that option still. We'll still do that phone screening up front. I know as things open up, we'd love to get back to face-to-face, depending on the role too. For a lot of the Des Moines based, we have leaders here locally. So eventually, yes, But for now, we want to make sure everyone's safe first and foremost. And we have a lot of opportunities to fill, and that's more efficient for us at this time and convenient for the candidate as well. So yeah, it'll be reassessed. I'm confident.
For Wellmark, so we have transitioned to like a hybrid schedule. We never really had hybrid schedule prior to COVID. And we do know that we're not going to be returning to the office 100%. And I think when you think about scheduling interviews, it'll become difficult for those that are scheduling interviews to figure out, is that person in the office or not that day that the candidate wants to speak. So I think moving forward, we'll probably still most likely continue with having virtual interviews, and then there may be some positions they're required to come in person, but for the most part, they'll be virtual over like Teams or Zoom.
Yeah, and we're kind of the same here at NFM. Our initial interviews will probably, I would assume, always be virtual, or if you don't have a phone, phone call is perfect, or phone that does virtual, phone call is perfectly fine. We're actually doing in-person interviews for our manager interviews, like I said, that second interview. We're actually having walk-in interviews right now for a few of our positions. And we do it just because our positions are in the store as far as the retail openings go. And we want to give you a tour of the space too, to make sure you kind of understand and get an idea of what the position looks like, especially in our warehouse. So we want those to be in person, but depending on the position, could be virtual if it is a work at home opportunity.
All right, thank you. And then Drew would like to know if you have any advice for the youth today about the importance of starting out as entry level and how experience might calculate more than salary or wage. Let's see, I don't know. Jesse, did you want to?
Jesse?
I know you.
Okay, so can you say it one more time? So
So how would you explain to someone that's coming in and, they don't have a lot of experience, but they have maybe education, but they kind of explaining to them the importance of you're going to have to start out as entry level and work your way up. And do you have any advice to kind of ease that transition from, excuse me, I think that we should be making X amount of money for those new entry level positions without experience, but education?
Yeah, I can understand that. I remember getting out of college and then thinking actually one of my professors telling me I should be making this certain amount of money, and then it is not what I made graduating. So it is a hard reality on some of the things, but I think making sure when you're going into the companies that you are working for, so NFM, we pay based on years of experience, but I will consider, babysitting, which is not an official, W-2 job, we'll say. Or I've had people that have worked at their parent shop and over the years, things like that. Be honest about those little jobs you've done here and there, because that could help you get into those positions, and maybe bump you up in pay if that's what they're looking for, to kind of increase that pay amount. Find a company too that has annual reviews. That we have annual reviews with pay increases every single year. So find a company that you can grow and find those opportunities, and don't just think about pay because it's not always there. It's those development opportunities as well are also valuable to you in the future. It may not be monetary value in that very moment, but those development opportunities are what are going to make you progress in your career a lot faster than your peers.
May I just add a recent example from our intern program? We just wrapped up one of the classes, and there are a lot of competitive students that are looking for entry level or an internship. But on paper, you know, if you're going to go with someone who has the experience or had an internship under their belt versus someone who doesn't, that's who we're going to go with because they have the hands-on experience. And it could be alluding to Jesse, you know, babysitting. You may think that's minimal, but some of the volunteer activities that a lot of you may be involved with, organizations that you've tapped into and maybe dedicate some time to, that translates into very well into experience for a lot of the youth. So that's experience, but I can speak for Principal. We value the experience over, you know, dollars or, you know, a paid position that's outside of the industry too, but it's like more of the experience that we value. I mean, we're basing the roles on experience. Some of the roles do have number of years of experience, but when you talk to any recruiter, I think they would value experience over, you know, some of the education because we value the hands-on experience. I don't know, Stacy, you're very similar to, you know, our area. Wouldn't you say experiences do
Yep,
play a heavy role?
absolutely. Yeah, the making sure that you list those volunteer activities. I think a lot of high school students now, they have to, you don't have to, but it's optional, like civil accord hours. Making sure you list that. You know, like my daughter, she helps me out with different events that I volunteer on. So I always make sure, like, hey, make sure you talk about that. Make sure that's on your resume. So
Great. We have come to the end of our time today. We had so much great information. I'm really excited to see how many opportunities there are out there with our 3 companies today. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our job seekers and our participants. Thank you, Nicole and Drew, for helping host today's event. I'm looking forward to more events like this in the future, and I really appreciate everyone who came together to share all of this information. Again, don't forget, if you're a job seeker, to put your name in the chat box for Nicole to record. All right, thank you. We're going to end today's meeting, and good luck with your job search to all of you out there that attended. I appreciate you coming.